The wind howled through the empty streets of Boise, Idaho, sending dry leaves tumbling across the frozen pavement. The winter night stretched endlessly, its cold creeping into every shadowed alley and abandoned doorway. Under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, a Labrador Retriever lay curled up against the side of a closed bakery, his golden fur dusted with frost. He shivered, tucking his nose beneath his paw, but the cold was relentless. His name was Bailey. Just 6 weeks ago, Bailey had a warm bed, regular meals, and a home filled with love. He had belonged to Margaret Collins, a retired schoolteacher in her 70s who had lived alone but never felt lonely, not with Bailey by her side. Margaret had called him her golden boy, her companion in quiet days and long, peaceful evenings. Every morning, she would place his food bowl beside the kitchen table, murmuring, "Good morning, sweetheart." After breakfast, they would take slow walks through Julia Davis Park, where Margaret fed the ducks while Bailey sat patiently at her feet. Afternoons were spent in their cozy house on Maple Street. Margaret would read in her armchair, the scent of old books and lavender tea filling the air. Bailey would nap beside her, his head resting against her slippers. And in the evenings, as the fire crackled, she would hum old tunes while running her fingers through his fur. There was a rhythm to their life, a quiet understanding that needed no words. Margaret wasn't just Bailey's owner. She was his world. But home can disappear in an instant. Bailey had noticed the change before anyone else. Margaret had been slower climbing the stairs, her hands trembling slightly as she poured his water. Just a little tired, she had reassured him. But on that fateful afternoon, she had collapsed in the kitchen, gasping for breath. Bailey barked frantically, pacing around her as she reached for the phone. "Shoo, it's okay, boy," she whispered, weakly stroking his head. She never got up again. When the paramedics arrived, Bailey tried to follow, but the door shut in his face. The sound of sirens faded into the distance, leaving only silence. For 3 days, Bailey waited. Then, new voices filled the house, Margaret's children, who had not visited in years. They moved quickly, packing boxes, discussing what to sell and donate. "What about the dog?" someone asked. "I can't take him," a woman replied. "And Tom's allergic." "We'll call a shelter tomorrow," another voice said. That night, Bailey curled up on Margaret's pillow, inhaling the faint lavender scent that still lingered. By morning, the house was empty. The front door shut. And he was alone. Now, shivering in the bitter wind, Bailey lifted his head, his breath forming small clouds in the night air. The world outside Margaret's home was not kind. He had tried to return once, but a stranger lived there now. The man had opened the door just long enough to yell, "Get out," before slamming it shut. Bailey had wandered the streets ever since, growing thinner, weaker. People ignored him. Some chased him away. He was no longer anyone's golden boy. He was just another stray. But life has a way of changing in an instant. Before the sun would rise, a single choice would change everything. The morning began as it always did. The scent of coffee filled the kitchen, the soft hum of the radio drifting through the house. Margaret moved slowly, her steps more hesitant than usual. She reached for Bailey's bowl with trembling fingers, pausing to steady herself against the counter. Bailey tilted his head, watching her closely. Something was wrong. Margaret smiled down at him, though her eyes looked distant. "Just a little tired today, sweetheart." Her voice was soft, reassuring, but Bailey sensed the weakness in it. She took a slow breath, reached for the phone, then suddenly gasped. The phone slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the floor. Margaret's hand clutched at her chest, her body swaying. Bailey jumped to his feet, barking frantically. Margaret tried to steady herself, but her knees buckled. She crumpled to the floor, her breathing ragged and uneven. "Shoo, it's okay, boy," she whispered, reaching out with a trembling hand. Her fingers brushed his fur, the touch light as a feather. Then, her hand went still. Bailey nudged her, whimpering. He barked again, pacing around her, his tail low, his ears flattened against his head. The house was silent except for his desperate cries. Then, in the distance, sirens. The front door burst open, and uniformed strangers rushed in. They spoke quickly, moving with urgent precision. One checked Margaret's pulse, another unrolled a stretcher. Bailey tried to get closer, but one of them gently pushed him back. "Sorry, buddy," the paramedic murmured. "We have to take care of her." They lifted Margaret onto the stretcher, their voices firm but calm. Bailey whined, pressing his nose against her arm, but she didn't move. A paramedic placed a reassuring hand on his head. "You can't come with us, boy. Stay here." The door closed. The sirens faded. Margaret was gone. The house remained eerily silent for 2 days. Bailey sat by the door, waiting for the sound of her voice, the shuffle of her footsteps. But she never returned. On the 3rd day, the door opened again. This time, it was Margaret's children. They didn't call out for her. They didn't sit in her chair or linger in her room. Instead, they moved quickly, sorting through her belongings with quiet efficiency. "She kept everything," the woman muttered, pulling open a drawer. "It's just stuff," the man replied. "We'll donate most of it." Bailey wagged his tail hesitantly, stepping forward. No one looked at him. "What about the dog?" someone asked. "I can't take him," the woman said. "And Tom's allergic." The man sighed. "We'll call animal control tomorrow." Bailey didn't understand their words, but he understood their tone. They were leaving. And they weren't taking him with them. That night, the house was cold and silent. Bailey wandered through the empty rooms, his nails clicking softly against the hardwood floor. The scent of Margaret still lingered, on the chair where she had read her books, on the blanket draped over the couch, in the kitchen where she had brewed her tea every morning. But the warmth was gone. Instinct led him to her bedroom, the place where he had always felt safest. He jumped onto her bed, curling up in the spot where she had slept. The sheets carried the faintest trace of lavender, her familiar scent wrapping around him like a memory. Bailey closed his eyes, listening for the sound of her voice, waiting for the soft touch of her hand on his head. But the house remained silent. For the first time in his life, Bailey was truly alone. By morning, unfamiliar voices echoed through the house. Bailey's ears perked up as he heard footsteps approaching. The bedroom door swung open, and Margaret's daughter stood there, dressed in a tailored coat, her phone pressed against her ear. "Yes, the realtor will be here soon," she said, barely glancing at Bailey. "We need to get this place listed as soon as possible." Bailey wagged his tail hesitantly, stepping forward, hoping for a kind word, a gentle touch, something. But the woman simply sighed and turned away. Minutes later, a stranger arrived, a tall man in a suit, carrying a clipboard. The realtor. He walked through the house briskly, making notes, checking windows, inspecting the kitchen. Bailey followed, his tail wagging slowly, hoping someone would notice him. Instead, the man frowned. "What's the dog still doing here?" Margaret's daughter glanced at Bailey as if seeing him for the first time. "Oh, right." The realtor shook his head. "We can't have him here when we show the place. It'll put off buyers." With that, he strode to the front door, pulling it open. A gust of cold air rushed in. "Come on, boy," he said impatiently, clapping his hands. Bailey hesitated. He had never been told to leave before. Margaret had always welcomed him inside. This was his home. "Come on," the man repeated, stepping closer, his voice firmer. Bailey took a step back, confused. With an exasperated sigh, Margaret's daughter grabbed a broom from the corner. "Just shoo him out," she muttered. The realtor nudged Bailey toward the door, waving his arms. "Go on, get." Bailey backed up again, his ears flattening, his heart pounding. Then, without warning, the broom swiped at the floor beside him, startling him. He leaped backward, his nails skidding against the floor. The cold air hit him as he stumbled outside. Before he could react, the door slammed shut. Bailey blinked, shaking off the shock. He padded up to the door and sniffed at the crack, whimpering softly. No answer. He turned, staring at the house that had always been his. The house where Margaret had lived, where he had slept by her side, where he had belonged. But now, the curtains were drawn. The warmth was gone. And the door was locked. Bailey sat on the porch, staring at the place that had once been his home. The realization settled deep into his chest. Margaret was gone. And he had been left behind. Bailey had always known where home was. It was the small house on Maple Street, the red front door, the smell of Margaret's lavender perfume. It was where he had spent his life, curled at her feet, feeling safe, loved. So the next morning, he did the only thing that made sense. He went back. The house looked the same. The curtains still framed the windows, the flower pots still lined the porch. For a moment, hope swelled in Bailey's chest. Maybe Margaret had come back. Maybe it had all been a mistake. He stepped onto the porch, tail wagging hesitantly. He pawed at the door, let out a soft whimper, then a bark. But when the door opened, it wasn't Margaret standing there. A tall man frowned down at him. "What the?" Bailey wagged his tail, ears perking up. Maybe this man knew Margaret. Maybe he could help. Then, the man's face twisted in annoyance. "Shoo! Get out of here!" Bailey took a step back, confused. The man waved his arms. "Go on, get." Bailey barked once, pleading. The man grabbed a broom from inside and swiped it toward Bailey. "I said get." Bailey jumped back, startled. Then the door slammed shut. He stood there for a long moment, staring. The house still looked the same. But it wasn't home anymore. Bailey tried the neighbors next. He wandered down the street, approaching familiar driveways, wagging his tail hopefully. But no one recognized him. An older woman looked at him from her porch, then shook her head. "Poor thing," she muttered, then went back inside. A man getting into his car glanced at him, sighed, and drove away. Bailey sat on the sidewalk, watching. He had lived on this street his whole life. But to them, he was just another stray. Hunger came quickly. By the second night, the gnawing emptiness in his stomach had become unbearable. He wandered through back alleys, searching for anything edible. He learned fast. Garbage bins behind restaurants held the best scraps, but he had to be quick. Other dogs, bigger and meaner, claimed them first. He dodged growls, bared teeth, learned which alleys were dangerous and which streets had kind people who might drop a crust of bread. He found shelter beneath a porch behind an abandoned house, curling up tightly against the wind. That's where he met Rusty. The old stray, his coat ragged and his muzzle gray, eyed Bailey warily. "First time out here, huh?" Bailey didn't answer, he just curled tighter, shivering. Rusty sighed. "Better toughen up, kid. No one's coming for you. This ain't the life you knew." Bailey closed his eyes. He didn't want this life. But he had no choice. Bailey lay curled beneath the porch, his stomach twisting with hunger, his body aching from exhaustion. The world outside Margaret's home was nothing like the life he had known. Here, there were no warm blankets, no gentle hands stroking his fur, no kind voice calling him sweetheart. Here, there was only the cold, the hunger, and the silence. Rusty, the old stray, watched him with a knowing expression. "You're not used to this, are you?" Rusty said, stretching his stiff legs. His coat was dull and patchy, his ribs visible beneath his matted fur. Life had worn him down, but his eyes were sharp, filled with the wisdom of experience. Bailey lifted his head slightly but said nothing. Rusty sighed. "Figured. You've got the look, used to warm beds, regular meals, someone who loved you." He shook his head. "That's all gone now, kid." Bailey's ears flattened. He didn't want to believe that. But Margaret wasn't coming back. Rusty stood, stretching. "Come on. You'll starve if you sit here feeling sorry for yourself." Bailey hesitated, then rose to his feet, following the old dog into the night. The lesson began quickly. Behind Gus's diner, Rusty showed Bailey how to dig through the garbage bins without tipping them over. "You gotta be quick," Rusty muttered, nudging a half-eaten sandwich toward Bailey. "The raccoons get aggressive, and the cooks don't like us hanging around." Bailey sniffed the food hesitantly. He had never eaten from the trash before. But hunger was stronger than pride. Rusty gave a small, approving nod as Bailey took his first bite. They moved through the alleys, Rusty pointing out which places were safe and which ones weren't. "Stay away from the old rail yard," he warned. "Big packs of dogs there, mean ones. You're not ready for that." Bailey swallowed hard. He had never been afraid of other dogs before. Rusty led him toward an old church, where a kind woman sometimes left out food. They arrived just in time to see another stray, thin, desperate, licking the last scraps from a bowl. Rusty sighed. "Too late tonight. Maybe tomorrow." Bailey's stomach clenched. He had never gone to bed hungry before. Rusty gave him a long look. "You're learning, kid. But you gotta understand something." Bailey looked up at him. "Out here, you're just another mouth to feed. No one's looking for you." The words hit like a heavy weight in Bailey's chest. For days, he had clung to the hope that Margaret's family would return, that someone would recognize him, that life would go back to how it had been. But Rusty's words rang true. No one was coming. Bailey lowered his head. The life he had known was gone forever. The wind howled through the empty streets of Boise, Idaho, carrying thick snowflakes that swirled like ghosts under the flickering glow of the street lamps. The cold was merciless, seeping into Bailey's bones with every step he took. His paws ached from the icy pavement, his fur heavy with frost. He had survived harsh nights before, but nothing like this. He needed shelter. Bailey staggered down an alley, sniffing desperately for warmth. He had hoped to find an open doorway, a vent blowing warm air, anything to shield him from the brutal wind. Instead, he found only emptiness. A large dumpster sat at the far end of the alley, its sides coated with a thin layer of ice. It wasn't much, but it was something. Bailey curled into a tight ball beside it, pressing himself against the metal in a feeble attempt to block the wind. But the cold clung to him like an unshakable shadow, creeping into his skin, making him shiver violently. His breathing slowed. His eyes grew heavy. Sleep. Maybe if he slept, he wouldn't feel the cold anymore. Maybe it wouldn't matter. Then, a sound. Faint at first, almost swallowed by the wind. Bailey's ears twitched. He lifted his head. There it was again. A cry. Not an animal. Not another stray. A child. Bailey's body stiffened. He knew that sound, fragile, desperate. He had heard it before, years ago, when Margaret's granddaughter had visited as a baby. A human pup. Alone. The logical part of him, the part that had learned how cruel the streets could be, told him to ignore it. He could barely keep himself warm. He had no food, no strength. The streets didn't offer kindness. They took whatever they could. Survival meant looking out for himself. And yet, Bailey pushed himself onto unsteady legs. His body screamed in protest, but he forced himself forward, following the sound. The cry was weak, growing fainter, like the wind was swallowing it whole. Bailey picked up his pace. His paws crunched through the snow as he rounded the corner of the alley. His breath was heavy, misting in the freezing air. Then he saw it. A cardboard box, placed beside a dumpster. The sides were damp with melting snow. Bailey stepped closer, sniffing the edge of the box. Inside, wrapped in nothing but a thin, soaked blanket, was an infant. The baby's face was pale, its lips tinged with blue. Tiny hands curled into fists, shaking weakly with each feeble cry. Bailey froze. He had seen suffering since losing Margaret. He had known hunger, cold, and loneliness. But this was something else. Something he couldn't walk away from. Bailey stood over the box, his breath heavy in the freezing air. The baby's cries had grown weaker, barely audible over the howling wind. Tiny fists trembled, the little body stiff from the cold. Bailey's instincts screamed at him to move, to find warmth for himself. He was barely surviving as it was. He had no food, no shelter. The streets had taught him to think only of his own survival. And yet, he couldn't walk away. He lowered his head, sniffing the infant's damp blanket. The scent was unfamiliar, no traces of a mother, no warmth of a home. Just cold. Bailey knew cold. He knew what it did, how it stole warmth little by little, how it crept into the bones and refused to let go. Margaret had always made sure he was warm. On winter nights, she would wrap a thick quilt around them both, whispering softly as she stroked his fur. "We take care of each other, sweetheart. That's what love is." Bailey swallowed hard. The baby let out a soft, broken whimper. Without another thought, he stepped into the box. Carefully, he curled himself around the tiny body, pressing his thick fur against the baby's cold skin. He lay as close as he could, tucking his nose beneath the child's chin, shielding the fragile form from the wind. At first, the baby didn't react. Its little body was too cold, too weak. Bailey stayed still, letting his warmth seep into the infant. His own body trembled, but he didn't move. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The baby's breathing steadied slightly, its tiny fingers twitching against Bailey's fur. Bailey licked the infant's cheek gently, the way Margaret used to stroke his head when he was scared. "You're not alone," he thought. "Not tonight." The wind howled around them, but inside the box, there was warmth. Bailey pressed closer, protecting the baby the only way he knew how. He didn't know if help would come. He only knew that he wouldn't let this child die alone. Bailey lay curled tightly around the infant, his body stiff from the cold, but he didn't move. The snow continued to fall, settling on the edges of the damp cardboard box, piling up in uneven drifts along the alley walls. The night stretched on. Bailey's breathing was slow, his muscles aching from exhaustion. He had never been this cold in his life, not even on the worst nights since he'd been left behind. But every time the baby whimpered or shifted slightly, he tightened his body around it, shielding it as best he could. Then, in the distance, footsteps. Bailey's ears twitched. He forced himself to lift his head. A shadow moved at the entrance of the alley, accompanied by the low hum of a voice, someone talking, though he couldn't tell who. The footsteps drew closer. A woman's voice, tired but warm, carried through the wind. "Yes, I'm just getting home now," she was saying, speaking into a phone. "Long shift, but at least I have tomorrow off. I swear, the hospital is getting busier every day." Bailey let out a low whimper, barely more than a whisper against the howling wind. The woman stopped mid-sentence. There was silence. Then, slowly, she stepped into the alley. The glow of her phone's flashlight flickered against the icy pavement, searching. Bailey raised his head just enough to meet her gaze. Her breath caught in her throat. "Oh my God." The phone slipped from her hand, landing in the snow with a muffled thud. She rushed forward. Bailey tensed instinctively, but he didn't move away. He watched as the woman dropped to her knees beside the box, her gloved hands shaking as she pulled back the damp blanket. "A baby," she breathed. "A baby." Her hands moved with practiced urgency, her fingers brushing against the infant's face. The baby stirred slightly, letting out a soft whimper. Bailey saw the fear in the woman's eyes, fear and determination. She yanked off her coat without hesitation, wrapping it around the baby and cradling the small body against her chest. "You poor thing, you poor, sweet thing." Her voice trembled, but her movements were steady. Then, finally, she looked at Bailey. Snow clung to his fur, his body trembling with cold. But he didn't move. He just stared up at her with tired, amber eyes. Understanding dawned in her expression. "You," her voice softened. "You were keeping the baby warm, weren't you?" Bailey blinked slowly. A moment passed, just long enough for the truth to settle between them. Then, she reached out. Her fingers, hesitant but gentle, brushed over Bailey's frost-covered head. He stiffened for only a second before leaning into the touch, too exhausted to resist. "You're a good boy," she whispered. "A very good boy." The sound of sirens pierced the air, flashing red and blue against the alley walls. The woman stood, still cradling the baby close to her chest. "Help is coming," she promised. "You're safe now. Both of you." Bailey let out a breath. For the first time in a long time, he believed it. The flashing red and blue lights bounced off the brick walls of the alley, illuminating the snow-covered ground. Bailey watched as figures moved swiftly, paramedics in dark uniforms, a police officer stepping out of his cruiser, voices murmuring instructions. The woman, the one who had found them, held the baby tightly against her chest, shielding it from the cold. Her coat was wrapped securely around the small body, and she spoke quickly to one of the paramedics, her breath visible in the freezing air. "I found them here," she said, her voice urgent but steady. The baby was freezing, barely responsive. And the dog, she glanced at Bailey, still curled beside the now empty cardboard box. He was keeping the baby warm. The paramedic, a middle-aged man with a weathered face, frowned as he carefully examined the infant. "If you hadn't found them when you did," his voice trailed off, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Bailey shifted his weight, his legs unsteady beneath him. He was exhausted. Every muscle ached, and now that the adrenaline was wearing off, he could feel just how cold he truly was. The woman noticed. "Hey," she murmured, kneeling beside him. "You're freezing too, aren't you?" Bailey didn't respond. He only looked at her with tired, amber eyes. The paramedic, now holding the bundled infant securely, gestured toward the ambulance. "We'll take the baby to County General. She needs immediate care, but she's stable." He turned to the police officer. Any idea where the mother is? The officer shook his head. No reports of a missing child yet, but we'll start checking the area. His gaze landed on Bailey. What about the dog? The woman placed a protective hand on Bailey's head. He saved this baby's life, she said firmly. He's coming with me. The officer raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? She nodded. Absolutely. Bailey didn't remember much about the ride in the woman's car. The warmth of the heater, the softness of the blanket she placed over him, it all blurred together. He drifted in and out of sleep, his body too weak to do much else. When the car finally stopped, Bailey opened his eyes to find himself somewhere unfamiliar. A small house with soft, glowing lights in the windows. The woman stepped out, opening the passenger door and gently coaxing him forward. Come on, boy, she said softly. Let's get you inside. Bailey hesitated. It had been so long since he had stepped into a home. Since he had been invited inside. But something in her voice, in the gentle way she reached for him, made him trust her. Slowly, he followed her through the door. The warmth hit him immediately. A fire crackled in the fireplace, and the scent of something familiar, chicken, maybe, filled the air. The woman knelt beside him, running a hand gently over his back. You're safe now, she whispered. Bailey let out a long, slow breath. Maybe, just maybe, she was right. The days that followed felt like a dream. Bailey had food again, real food, not scraps from a dumpster. He had a warm bed, a soft blanket, and a quiet place by the fireplace where he could rest without fear. The woman, whose name, he had learned, was Claire, spoke to him often. You're a hero, you know, she told him one morning, scratching behind his ears. Everyone's talking about the baby you saved. Bailey didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. The warmth. The kindness. Then, one evening, Claire set a newspaper down in front of him. Bailey blinked at it, tilting his head. On the front page was a photo of him, his fur still dusted with snow, his tired eyes staring up at the camera. The headline read, Stray Dog Saves Abandoned Baby, a Christmas Miracle. Bailey huffed softly. Claire laughed. You're famous now, buddy. She turned the page, her smile fading slightly. And look at this. Bailey watched as she ran a finger over a different part of the article. They've been looking for you. He perked his ears. Claire looked at him with something softer in her eyes, something sad, yet hopeful. Margaret's family, they saw the story. They recognized you. She hesitated, then said, They thought you were gone, Bailey. Bailey's heart clenched. Margaret. His Margaret. For so long, he had believed she had left him. That she had moved on, forgotten him. But she hadn't. And now, they knew. Claire exhaled slowly. Her daughter, Helen, she wants to see you. She hesitated, then reached out, gently running her fingers through Bailey's fur. I told her she could come tomorrow. Bailey's body tensed. Did she want to take him back? Did she think, after everything, that he was still hers? Claire must have sensed his unease because she smiled softly. Hey, don't worry. She rested her forehead lightly against his. No one's taking you anywhere you don't want to go. Bailey let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Home. It wasn't the same as it had been with Margaret. But as Claire sat beside him, the fire crackling in the background, he realized something. For the first time since she had left, he felt safe. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The next morning, Bailey lay by the fireplace, the warmth soothing his aching bones. The past few days had felt unreal: food, comfort, the sound of a kind voice speaking to him like he mattered. But today was different. Claire had been up early, tidying the small living room, checking the time more often than usual. She had fed him a little extra for breakfast, her voice softer than usual when she spoke. "She'll be here soon," she murmured, kneeling beside him. "Margaret's daughter, Helen." Bailey's ears perked at the familiar name. Margaret. It had been so long since he had heard that name spoken with warmth. A knock at the door startled him. Claire stood, took a deep breath, then opened it. A woman stood on the porch, bundled in a wool coat, her gloved hands gripping her purse tightly. Her face was familiar. Bailey had seen her before, years ago, visiting Margaret's house. But it had been rare. "Helen?" Claire said gently. The woman nodded, stepping inside. She glanced around briefly before her eyes landed on Bailey. Bailey remained still, watching her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, Helen exhaled, eyes misting over. "Oh, Bailey," she whispered. "You're really here." Bailey's ears flicked at the sound of her voice. Slowly, she stepped forward, kneeling in front of him. I thought you were gone." She hesitated, then reached out a shaking hand, stopping just inches from his fur. Bailey didn't pull away. Tentatively, she brushed her fingers over his head. "You were my mother's best friend," she said softly. "She loved you so much." Something in Bailey's chest ached at those words. Helen took a deep breath. "I need you to know, my mother never abandoned you." Her voice wavered, her fingers stroking gently over his ears. She got sick. It happened so fast. We thought," she swallowed hard. "We thought we were making the right decision, but leaving you behind was a mistake. A terrible mistake." Bailey blinked, processing her words. "She asked about you," Helen whispered. "When she got better. She wanted to know if you were okay." Bailey's heart pounded. Margaret had wanted him. She hadn't left him by choice. Helen sniffed, blinking back tears. "When we saw your picture in the paper, I couldn't believe it. After all this time, you survived." She let out a small, watery laugh. "And, of course, you're a hero. Mom would have been so proud." Bailey let out a small whine, shifting closer. Helen smiled through her tears, running a gentle hand down his back. "I'm so sorry, Bailey." Claire, who had remained quiet, finally spoke. "He's been through a lot." Helen nodded. "I can see that." She took a deep breath. "I don't know what your plans are for him, but I just wanted to see him." She glanced at Claire, then back at Bailey. "To say I'm sorry." Claire hesitated. Then, she reached over and rested a hand on Bailey's back. "He has a home here. But if you ever want to visit him, I think he'd like that." Helen's breath caught, and she nodded. "I'd love that." For the first time in a long time, Bailey felt something settle inside him. Closure. He wasn't lost anymore. He was home. The house was quiet as evening settled in. The fire crackled softly, casting a golden glow across the room. Bailey lay stretched out on the rug, his eyes half closed, his body finally at peace. Claire sat nearby, sipping a cup of tea, occasionally glancing at him with a small smile. "You had quite the day, didn't you?" she murmured. Bailey flicked an ear but didn't lift his head. He was too comfortable, too warm, too full. The kind of contentment he hadn't felt in a long, long time. Helen had left a few hours ago, her visit lingering in Bailey's mind in a way he hadn't expected. Seeing her again had stirred something deep inside him, memories of Margaret, of a life he had thought was lost forever. But it hadn't been lost. It had changed. And somehow, against all odds, he had found something new. Claire reached down, running a gentle hand over his back. "You deserve this, you know." Bailey let out a soft sigh, pressing his head against her knee. He hadn't known what home was supposed to feel like after losing Margaret. He had spent so many months searching for something he thought was gone forever. But maybe home wasn't just one place. Maybe it wasn't even just one person. Maybe it was love. And love had found him again. Claire set her cup down and leaned back in her chair, watching the snow fall outside. "I talked to Helen before she left," she said after a moment. "She's going to check in on us from time to time." She glanced down at him. "You're part of her family too, you know." Bailey let his eyes close fully now, the warmth of the fire lulling him towards sleep. Family. The word felt right. Not just because of Helen. Not just because of Margaret's memory. But because of Claire. Because of this small, quiet home filled with kindness. Because he wasn't alone anymore. Claire sighed contentedly, reaching for a blanket to drape over herself. "Sleep well, hero." Bailey's tail gave a small wag, his last conscious thought one of gratitude. For warmth. For love. For home. Bailey's journey is more than just a tale of survival, it is a testament to asterisk loyalty, resilience, and the power of kindness. The true meaning of home. Home isn't just a place, it's the people who love and care for us. Bailey lost Margaret, the person who was his entire world, but he eventually found another loving home with Claire. Just like Bailey, we all experience loss, but new beginnings can bring unexpected joy. Acts of kindness can change lives. Bailey, a dog abandoned and forgotten, didn't hesitate to help another helpless soul. We all have the power to make a difference with even the smallest gestures of kindness. No one is truly forgotten. Margaret never abandoned Bailey by choice, and even though her family made mistakes, they eventually recognized them and sought to make things right. Forgiveness and understanding are key to healing and moving forward. Animals feel, love, and remember. Bailey's devotion, his grief, and his ability to trust again show that animals experience deep emotions. They don't forget kindness or cruelty. If they can love unconditionally, why shouldn't we? Bailey's story is heartwarming, but the sad truth is that millions of animals are abandoned every year. Many never get the second chance Bailey did. You can be that second chance. Adopt, don't shop. If you're looking for a pet, consider rescuing from a shelter. There are countless dogs and cats waiting for a loving home. Support animal shelters and rescue groups, donate, volunteer, or foster an animal in need. Even small efforts can make a huge impact. Be kind to strays. A little food, a warm place to rest, or even just kindness can mean everything to an animal struggling to survive. Educate others, share stories like Bailey's to spread awareness about animal welfare. Compassion grows when we share it. At the heart of this story is a simple but powerful message: love never truly dies, it just finds new ways to live. Let's choose to be part of that love. Let's make the world a kinder place, one act of compassion at a time.